Good day, investors. Welcome to Vested with Jared Bowers. Last time, we went deep on diversification. What it is, what it isn't, how it's applied, mostly in the money sense of things. And today we're going to continue our talk on diversification. We'll talk a bit more about money, but mostly I want to talk about diversification applied to life. Now, I mentioned last time that I've often heard people use the claim of diversification as an excuse to buy things that they want. And I thought that it would be interesting to kick things off today, talking about some of the examples that I've seen firsthand and a couple that I've heard from others, where diversification was used as the advertised justification for why somebody was spending money, was buying something. The first one that comes to mind is guns. Maybe not the first example you expected me to talk about, but it is the first time I remember hearing this excuse. I grew up in the Midwest, where hunting is a big deal, and there are a lot of gun enthusiasts. And when I was in middle school, my family and I were at a friend's house. And this family friend, this gentleman, wanted to show my dad and my brothers his gun collection. And it was extensive. Old guns, new guns, boxes of ammo, gun cases, safes, some miscellaneous things that go boom, packed into a basement room. And he made the point to us, he really wanted to make it clear to my dad that this was part of his investment portfolio, that he expected to make money from this. It was part of his retirement plan. And I remember being very skeptical, even at the time, as a 12 or 13-year-old. And I remember thinking, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm pretty sure that people don't make money collecting guns. It sounded to me like it was just an excuse to buy more. But truly, that may have been my thought, or it may have been a thought planted in a conversation with my dad afterwards, because he was not swayed by that argument from his friend, if I remember correctly. He saw what his friend was up to. Another example is with cars. Often, people use the excuse of, it's an investment, with classic cars. Even car enthusiasts know that buying new cars can't be claimed as being an investment. Unless you're spending millions of dollars on some very limited production run of a rare new car. But with classic cars, there are lots of people who use that as an excuse, but mostly to buy more. They say, it's an investment, and it diversifies my portfolio. Watches, wristwatches are another one. And you do not have to go far in the world of watches and watch collecting to find plenty of people claiming that their watch collection is an investment and a diversified part of their financial future. Well, it is part of their financial future. It's just probably much more on the expense side than it is on the investment side. There are people who have the same justifications with art. Now, there are some people who successfully invest in and make money in rare art. But for most, it's just a collection. And it mostly represents an expense. On the less expensive side, I've seen this with video games, specifically vintage video games. I'm sure that there are people who bought a game for $5 and sold it for $500. Good for them. But if they added up everything that they've purchased versus what they've sold them for or expect they would be worth at auction, for instance, usually the ROI is neutral at best, usually negative. How about musical instruments? Being a musician, I'm around a lot of people who love musical instruments, which are wonderful. I love them too. Guitars being the most common one that I've seen, people claiming as an investment, as part of diversifying their holdings. An interesting one, because it actually, on the surface, does seem like an investment, is land. And specifically in my neck of the woods, woods being literal in this case, hunting land. I've had a number of people seek my advice on purchasing land to diversify their portfolio. They want to purchase a large tract of hunting land under the guise that it will make them money in the future. Now, admittedly, it may make them money. It probably won't make a lot. Farmland and hunting land don't tend to go up a lot in value, even though you've seen headlines about land values, farmland, ranch land, timberland, hunting land being at record highs. it's usually pretty stable. And the returns tend to be pretty modest. And those returns almost never factor in the holding costs associated with them. My expectation, as long as they don't overpay for it, is that most land will go up in value over time. But it is not an investment in many cases. It may have the properties of an investment, but I would not recommend that they buy it for the purpose of return enhancement or diversification. It's just something that they really want. Another one that I've seen, and this was on YouTube, not in person, is someone who collects classic vintage barbell plates, claiming them to be part of their investment portfolio. I laughed at that one. I guess all I need to do is start to buy old gym equipment, and I can claim it as an investment. Did you hear that, babe? There was one case I know of where someone had a very valuable classic car collection that they had accumulated over decades, and then they slowly sold off, piece by piece, one car at a time, to live on in retirement. In that case, it actually did work. And it would be interesting to calculate the return on investment in that case. And you know that I like to caveat these types of discussions with the exceptions. There are times when people have made money on these things. All these things. Guns, watches, video games, maybe vintage weight plates. But really, my hunch is that it's very similar to day traders in the market. They only tell you about their wins. They never talk about their losses, which usually is the larger category. And in all of these cases, let's make sure to be honest with ourselves and admit that buying and collecting these things is a hobby and not feel like we have to justify them as an investment. In nearly every case that I've come across, this approach of it's an investment is really just an excuse for buying more of what someone wants. And that is okay. Because I don't want you to hear me say that you shouldn't care about or spend money on any of these things that I mentioned. If it is important to you and you can afford it, if that's what you really care about, then go for it. But I care a lot about approaching things honestly and not lying to ourselves or to those around us about why we are doing it. And the easiest person to lie to is ourselves. In most of the examples that I just mentioned, the person claiming diversification, portfolio enhancement, as one of the main motivations, really did believe it themselves. They had talked themselves into it. And it's not because they're dumb. Because we are even more adept at justifying what we want and want to do, the smarter that we are. We are justification machines. For those of us with kids, consider this. Which ones are better at justifying their actions when confronted? The smart ones or the dumb ones? There you go. It is not any different with adults. And most of us have done it. Most of us have had areas where we've spent money, we have invested resources, and we have claimed that it is for the purpose of diversification when it's really just something that we wanted to do. So I am not saying don't do it. I'm saying do it because you want to and be honest about it. Because telling ourselves that it is for the purpose of diversification or it's for the purpose of monetary returns misaligns things. It opens a door with an excuse rather than with a reason. And it starts something out with a lie rather than with truth. The purpose of why we are doing something is really important for the long-term health of ourselves and of that thing. And you want your why to be real. Diversification, being a tool, needs to be used appropriately to actually be helpful. That's related to another tool that we've talked about before, debt. There's a difference between having the money to buy something because you borrowed it versus having the money because you earned it and saved it. In that case, claiming that you can afford something because you have the money to buy it when that money came from borrowing or because you can afford the monthly payments is a misapplication of the tool of debt in most cases. These tools are powerful and helpful, but, surprise, they can also be misapplied. And one of the main misapplications of diversification is what we touched on last time, in the last episode, that more is better. And let's touch on an example of that that's an issue in my world of financial services and financial investing. Also in other professions as well, and that is professional certifications, designations. More specifically, the often silly string of alphabet soup that often appears after someone's name. On business cards, email signatures, LinkedIn, you've seen it. Investment advisors are notorious for having strings of letters after their name that are at best meaningless and at worst a false signal to people that they are qualified for something that they aren't. But when I see them, it's an indication that they are probably more of a designation collector than they are a true professional. And they might be a bit of a shyster. I'm not going to name any of them specifically, at least the ones that fall into the subpar category. I will name the designations that do mean something in my world. But the problem is that there are enough people who don't know this and assume that 5 different 3 or 4 letter designations after a financial advisor's name, that alphabet soup that I mentioned, is a signal of knowledge or professional expertise, when really it usually means very little. Many of these designations can be purchased after completing a simple class or just self-certifying that you completed some curriculum. Often you just have to complete some online test that usually ends up being open book. Compared to the reputable designations that require a lot of the people that they are given to, that earn them. Time invested, rigorous study, examination to prove your knowledge to earn it. People with the meaningless designations are often trying to make up for a lack of knowledge, or they are actively trying to take advantage of people. And if you want to know the very short list of meaningful 3-letter designations in my world, the ones that are legitimate and actually mean something are CPA, CFP, and CFA. There's a lot of letter overlap there. CPA is a certified public accountant. CFP is certified financial planner. And CFA is chartered financial analyst. Those are rigorous. They take time and effort to achieve. They have a robust ethics component. They are overseen, regulated, and awarded by real governing bodies. And they all have ongoing continuing education requirements to continue to use those designations, those titles. Most other designations are from certification mills or just don't have the same authority, rigor, longevity, oversight, and therefore legitimacy. So a rule of thumb that I use is that anything beyond those 3 that I mentioned, CPA, CFP, and CFA, you should probably approach with skepticism. Not all of them fall into the meaningless or low quality category, but a high enough percentage of them do that you should approach it with skepticism. All right, minor rant of mine on that. I will probably rant more about that and related topics in the future, because the topic of financial services, investment advisors, and the reputation that my industry has is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And not because that reputation is stellar. Most of our examples so far have involved money, in the sense of what we buy with it. So I'd like to shift our focus and talk more about diversification applied to life in ways that extend beyond just what we own. Diversification applies to how we earn our money, how we use our money through both investing and spending, but also to how we invest our time and energy, what we do, who we spend our time with, and what gives and takes our energy. All of these involve investments of our 3 investing macros. And just like in financial portfolios, there is an inherent trade-off when it comes to diversification. An undiversified life or an under-diversified life is a life waiting for crisis, for something to go wrong that will result in derailment. Whereas an over-diversified life is a life that is waiting for progress. There's no depth that will result in meaningful returns. It goes both ways. Concentration can accelerate returns, but it can also accelerate losses and increase risk. Over-diversification might make you feel safe, but it's also a way of locking in being mediocre or taking too long to make progress, or taking the opportunity for meaningful returns off the table, which is a different kind of risk. I'm going to spend more time talking about the under-diversified life because I think that is more common. And that is where more of the downside lies, and therefore, where more of the upside is when it is approached appropriately. Let's go through different examples of diversification applied to life. We're going to look at what under-diversification in life is in certain areas versus what a properly diversified life would look like. let's talk about relationships. An under-diversified life is isolated and insulated. Few connections, shallow depth, or depth in only very few relationships. And what that results in is a life that is shallow and limited. A common example that comes to mind with this is with male relationships. As men get older, what tends to happen is that more of their friends just happen to be the husbands of their wife's friends. And that's not a bad thing per se, but it is often the result of a lack of intentionally investing in friendships. After we get married, our wives tend to be the driver of the social side of our portfolio. And we kind of just hang out with the people who happen to be there. And so many men do not pursue friendships and relationships outside of that narrow band, and do not intentionally invest in other friendships. And when hard times come, struggles emerge, maybe divorce happens, they realize that all they had were loose connections, very little depth. That is when many men feel the effects of that poor diversification. Their relationships are mostly shallow or peripheral. Let's explore an example on the professional side, and the direction that medicine has been going for a long time. This is not a medical rant, it's just an observation. I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anybody to hear this. I don't think it's even controversial, but doctors have gone from primarily being generalists to primarily being specialists over the past few decades. And that has had a lot of benefits. They've concentrated, and this has resulted in some very concentrated, specialized skill sets with big upsides, both when it comes to money and our deeper understanding of disease. But it has also resulted in a broad knowledge base of health and disease no longer being present in as many doctors, which has resulted in a lot of doctors that can't really help you with much. I know quite a few doctors, I'm friends with many, some of them are my clients, and many of these doctors acknowledge that there are many medical doctors who can't really doctor when it comes to basic things because of how narrow and specialized their scope is becoming, and the direction medicine is generally going. You may think that that's just fine. There are other docs for that, other specialists. But health and medicine are not applied in a vacuum. Everything is interconnected. Very little happens in isolation. Our bodies are a big puzzle of interconnected and interrelated pieces that all affect each other. And things that a specialist doctor treats is usually downstream from multiple upstream problems. And that over-specialization, one of the things that this has resulted in is becoming really, really good at treating disease, but really, really bad at identifying and addressing the upstream causes, many of which are related to lifestyle factors, choices that we make, investments that we do or do not make. And that is one of the big reasons why healthcare is looking less and less like healthcare and a lot more like sick care. Ah, crap, I said this wasn't a medical rant, and now it kind of sounds like that. Again, I'm not knocking doctors. It is silly that I even have to say this. I am massively pro-medicine and pro-doctor, but this is a reality. And we can't hide from the fact that an outgrowth of this lack of diversification, over-concentration, is contributing to this reality. My prescription for most health issues is to move more, lift more, eat better, and invest in quality relationships. And in my defense, that does fix and prevent a surprising number of maladies. Speaking of which, let's apply the topic of diversification to fitness. We talked in the last episode about the meathead who lived at the bench press station. Another common one that I see is the powerlifter who focuses primarily on strength in the big three lifts, the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift. And they are really strong in those, impressively strong, but they lack athleticism. They get winded just walking up the stairs. Their well check at the doctor's office would probably reveal a number of health concerns. And they're always dealing with nagging pains or injuries. They're really strong, they look like a unit, but they lack well-rounded athleticism. They'd probably end up in the hospital if they had to play a pickup basketball game, or if they tried to play soccer on the field. Too much concentration. On the other end of the spectrum, this is also common for distance runners or endurance cyclists. If you look at distance runners, because I don't just want to pick on meatheads, I pursue both and I have friends in both of these camps, which means that I know plenty of people that I can offend no matter what example I use. Consider the long distance runner or endurance cyclist who is incredibly fit, Their lungs and legs are in phenomenal shape, but they couldn't punch their way out of a wet paper bag. That is another example of overconcentration. They might benefit from a bit more dessert and a bit more upper body lifting. Continuing on the fitness theme, another thing that goes hand in hand with that is diet. If you have an undiversified or under-diversified diet, that can result in micro or macronutrient deficiencies that are not contributing to overall good health. The extreme of this being a mono diet, somebody who only eats one kind of food. But what's more common is just an under-diversified diet. Now let's consider the realm of how we invest our time. The most common application of overconcentration with our investment of time is not having very many different things that we invested in. Consider people that all they do is work. They invest very heavily in their career, but they don't have anything outside of that they're pursuing with the same level of vigor, the same level of interest and drive. Maybe getting good results where they're investing, but very narrowly. Probably could be getting better results overall if they spread their resources, diversified their approach, invested in other things. Consider the properly diversified version of each of these examples. The doctor who specializes in a niche field, but practices identifying upstream causes and is well versed in a number of broad areas of medicine. They have a broad understanding of the body and how lifestyle factors impact health that they can then use to help their patients get well or not get sick in the first place. There are doctors out there that do exactly that. There should be more. The area that is probably doing the best in this, family medicine, is shrinking because it's a very challenging field that is not as lucrative as many specialties. Consider the athlete who can squat, bench press, and deadlift respectable weights, but can also run a half marathon this coming weekend if they want to. That is impressive. That is athleticism and resilience. Probably not winning any powerlifting competitions, or winning the foot race or the bike race, but they are winning in overall health and fitness, and they're looking and feeling great. They can take pretty much anything that life throws at them, from a physical standpoint, much better than the athletic specialists can, the powerlifter or the endurance athlete. Consider our balance of professional career versus hobbies. All one or the other is not going to net us the best returns. Someone who is investing well in their career and is also investing in other pursuits outside of that is going to be living a fuller, more well-rounded life. And this, hopefully, has answered an important question. Why should we care about being diversified across areas of life? It's the same reason that we diversify from a financial standpoint. It preserves or expands our optionality, the things that we can invest in with our resources. It helps us avoid permanent losses, game over scenarios. If one area stops, ends, or is losing, there is something else there to grow or be invested in, to survive. Because of the inherent uncertainty in life, because we don't know the future, we diversify. Because variety is the spice of life. This applies more to diversification in life than it does to financial portfolios. It doesn't really matter so much in your financial portfolio as long as you're getting good returns, benefiting from diversification. You probably don't care if you have 3 or 30 or 300 stocks in your portfolio from a spice of life standpoint. But when it comes to investing in life, variety is really important. And a one-dimensional life is boring and lacks impact. But one major purpose and advantage of diversification as applied to life that I want to dig into more is how diversification allows for progress. This might be the most underrated thing about diversification applied to life. When we are pursuing multiple unrelated things, we have the opportunity to make progress in one or more of those areas when our investments in other areas may be not going to plan. Because life happens. Progress takes effort and takes time. It takes a lot of work to get that upside volatility, but downside volatility is going to happen as a matter of course. It's a part of life. Progress is often 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 5 steps forward and 3 steps back. And those steps back can be really frustrating. And those who are too concentrated in just 1 or 2 areas of pursuit, their portfolio of life is not diversified. When those steps back happen, they feel stuck or worse. They feel like they're just in a loss spiral. Compare that to the person who can still be encouraged in areas of their life where they're making progress. And it's not just about the downward volatility that comes with growth. There will also be periods of plateau. Even when we are investing well and leaning in and allocating our resources properly, even when we're consistently putting in the reps, there will be plateaus that can last for a long time. And for those who are too concentrated or who don't have other unrelated areas of pursuit, those are periods of time that can often result in discouragement or pulling back or despair and quitting. But when we have multiple avenues of pursuit, there will be somewhere that we are experiencing progress or opportunity when another area is experiencing regress or stagnation. A well-diversified life can have areas that are flowing while other areas are grinding. And the grind can take its toll, even when progress is being slowly eked out. To give an example from my life, the last number of years have been pretty awesome, but have also been pretty stressful. Some of it has been in my professional work as a portfolio manager. There have been many challenging situations and periods, but a lot of it has come from my nonprofit work. As the chairman of the board for the classical Christian school that I'm heavily involved with, and yes, the same one that I teach my investment students at, and also some of it has been driven by the stress of life in general. And all these things are areas that I love and that I've had the opportunity to make phenomenal progress in, especially looking back over the last 6 or 7 years. Stepping into leadership roles, helping raise tens of millions of dollars, helping lead organizations that I love through periods of tremendous growth and tremendous challenge, growth in people, building a beautiful new campus, growth in the financial portfolios, helping clients navigate challenging situations. Some of these I'll talk about in more detail in the future. Absolutely incredible things that I am so stinking thankful for, but stressful. Stressed out of my mind at times, to be honest. So part of what I did, was I leaned hard into other things during those periods. Fitness and nutrition has been a big one, because that was an area that I could control, that I could make measurable progress in, almost no matter the stress and overwhelm in the other areas. And I would like to convince you to find those areas of diversification and enjoyment in your life. I've always been a fitness enthusiast. I've been lifting for 25 years and cycling for 15 years. But I decided to really lean into it and apply the skills and principles that I've built and learned in investing and portfolio management to my health, my movement, my schedule, my programming, the intentional investment of all three macros. And it has been to great effect. Coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, that is part of what planted the seeds of what is now this. Vested. I saw how possible it was to make progress and stack wins in something by applying the same principles and approaches and using the same tools that I use to manage portfolios of money, but applied to my health. And I'm not winning any fitness competitions, but I am a lot healthier and in better shape in my late 30s than I've ever been. And the point of this is that it was an outlet that required more of me, more of my time, more of my energy, and more of my money during a time that other areas were also requiring a lot. And that may seem like a waste of resources, a misallocation, spending my time, energy, and money when I had other big areas that were requiring that of me. But if it wasn't for leaning into fitness and nutrition over the last number of years, I think I would have quit one or multiple of those professional or volunteer pursuits, and therefore not had the chance to pursue those, to see the progress, to be involved in those great things. I think I would have grown frustrated. Those times of plateau or regress, hitting my head against the wall for what seemed like a very long time in some of those areas. And that is the incredible thing about a well-diversified portfolio. It can have compounding effects in all areas. They can be energy-giving, even if they require energy to be put in. When it comes to applying what I do as a financial professional, there are the 3 different directions that I invest that with my time. I spend most of my time as a portfolio manager, managing money for my clients, as is appropriate, but I also invest time in helping people with their finances, pro bono, and in teaching financial education with my investment students. If all I applied my efforts in was my career, my professional work, I think that I would be. No, I know that I would not be as good at my job. I would not be doing as well or being as impactful in my career. Those other investments have had compounding effects. My other areas of pursuit, my hobbies, are, yes, fitness, but also music, writing, cooking, now podcasting. And I'm pretty sure that this isn't just a justification to do more. I'm very confident in saying that I would not be sitting here talking in your ears right now without those other pursuits. My other pursuits are adding to and making me better at all of it. If I was just a portfolio manager, or if I was just an athlete, or if I was just a teacher, or if I was just a podcaster, if that is all that I did, I know that that would result in less. A shallower life overall, and less impact. And the point here is that we need to choose the areas of pursuit that we intentionally grow and invest in over time. They do not have to be the same thing forever, but I do believe we should be pursuing something beyond our career, or beyond just our home life. And somewhat tangential, but very much related, we should be proud to pursue certain things that even seem to be a little bit silly to someone on the outside. Things that may seem frivolous or wasteful. Things that don't appear to have a positive ROI, return on investment. I will tell you quite clearly and confidently that it is okay to invest in something that does not monetize, where there's no money to be made, where there's no efficiency in life to be eked out, or at least nothing that's obvious, where we're not making an investment in productivity. If all we pursue is the productive and the practical and the profitable things, we can miss out on so much of what we have to pursue and enjoy. Beautiful things. The silly and fun things. The completely impractical things that we pursue simply because we want to and we enjoy them. Examples that I've seen myself is the doctor who loves model trains, the welder that loves fishing, the attorney that loves photographing nature, the stay-at-home mom that loves writing short stories, the high-pressure, high-octane, high-output executive that loves making beautiful desserts. That one might be productive, though. The CEO who trains and competes in Ironman competitions and in CrossFit. That one is surprisingly common. More to dissect on that another time. The portfolio manager who fancies himself a hybrid athlete. Interestingly, some of these pursuits, these areas of passion, are relaxing. But some of them are actually adding a different kind of strain and pressure to an already highly strained and high-pressure existence. So wouldn't that be a waste of resources? Isn't that taking away from your main responsibilities? I don't think so. I have a lot of evidence in my own life and in the lives of others that these pursuits are not just energy taking, they are energy giving. And if you have pursuits like this, I would love it if you reached out to me and told me about them. I would like to know what your career is and what your energy giving pursuits are. You can send me an email at feedback@vestedjb.com. And I would look forward to hearing from you. The different flavor, the different kind of pursuit is not just a reallocation of limited resources that takes away from other places. If done well and on purpose, it results in more overall, a wider and deeper life. Because an under-diversified life is waiting for crisis or stuckness that will eventually arrive with very little to offset it. And an over-diversified life is waiting for progress that will never come because there's not enough focus. But a well-diversified life isn't waiting for anything. There is always an area of meaningful pursuit to dig into, to invest in, to do that next thing that should be done, to put in some effective reps. That well-diversified life will have areas that are going well when other areas are stuck or struggling. And we can point to and focus on those wins even in the midst of losses or lack of progress in our other pursuits. And if everything feels like it's struggling at the same time, at least you have options of where to apply your investment resources. And the way that life goes, especially if you are investing well with purpose, investing on purpose for a purpose, the likelihood that everything will stay down is very low. Remember what we talked about last time. A well-diversified portfolio is diverse by category, what it is. It's diverse by location, where it's at. Diverse by driver of returns, what can make it go up. And diverse by risk, what can break it. And I will add this to that list. It's also diverse by time, when it pays off. We can invest in things that have a quick payoff or more immediate results, but we should mostly be investing in things that drive returns over time, both now and far into the future. Okay, how do we apply this approach to diversification to our lives? You've probably been thinking about examples in your own life, or in the lives of those around you, regarding under-diversified lives. So, first, we should identify areas of concentration that we have. And we do this with the Macro Audit that we've done before. Where are we investing our time, money, and energy? That will reveal our areas of concentration. Then ask the question, are those areas and that concentration what they should be? Importantly, do we even have areas of concentration in the first place? Most of us do, but if it's too concentrated, that's an issue. One-dimensionality is overrated. Well-roundedness and the ability to do and derive meaning from multiple things is underrated. And yes, concentration can provide returns, and that applies beyond money, but diversification when it comes to life just makes things more fun and more interesting. It gives you optionality. It can provide a safety net. It allows you to make progress when other things are not progressing. The executive who can kill it in the boardroom and in the weight room, and can elicit an emotional response from an audience with the music that they can play, and apologize to their kids when they mess up, and laugh at themselves when they completely ruin a recipe in the kitchen, that is quite a life. That is well-rounded. Compare that to Mr. Boardroom, who only invests in that area, the business side, because that's where he gets validation and that's where his strengths lie. He is going to be less effective overall compared to having other pursuits, which will very likely make him better at running the business, even though his macros are going to other places besides the office. And that's not just even though, it's because of. So first, when it comes to application, identify what is your portfolio. And an important step, write it down. Actually look at the places that you are primarily investing your time, energy, and money, and write them down so that you can see them. These should be areas that you pursue on a daily or weekly basis, because if you don't touch something in some way at least weekly, it probably doesn't count as a main part of your portfolio. Then what I would like you to do is try to determine what percentage of your resources are going into that area. And I don't think you should spend very much time trying to figure this out. Your gut is going to be close enough, because you shouldn't have that many things on your main list. To make it easier, imagine you have 10 blocks to stack across your main pursuits. You can cut the blocks in half if you must. What do you really spend time on? What is a key part of your portfolio, and what percentage of your investment resources are going into it? Now, look at what you have and what percent of your investments are going into each. That should give you a pretty clear view into where your concentration is at. You may have one thing, work for instance, that is getting 9 out of 10 of your investment blocks. If you have your work and not much else, you are too concentrated. That is a key indicator of under-diversification. And if you find yourself dividing every block in half so that you can put half a piece in a bunch of different places, that is probably a sign of over-diversification. If you have 20 things that are all spread out, and you have nothing on your list that looks like it's getting much attention, you may be over-diversified and struggling to get returns. By the way, the better you are at tracking and measuring and benchmarking, the more objectively you'll know where your resources are going. Then consider if you only have productive things on the list, but no unproductive things. And I will put unproductive in quotation marks. In that case, if you do, you need to consider reallocating. We know that if you don't have enough productive investments, we're going to have a hard time getting returns, accomplishing anything. That's the easy one to see. And because I'm talking to an audience that is listening to an investment podcast, I'm a lot less concerned about too many blocks being stacked in unproductive areas. That's where people are most likely going to default to looking for. Am I being productive enough? Am I doing enough positive ROI activities? But if you are low on those unproductive areas, I think this is important to consider. Do you have enough or even any areas where you are not worried about the return on investment? You're not worried about the productivity that can be accomplished by it. You're not thinking about the potential for multitasking. where you can layer multiple pursuits of productive things? Do you have an area that you're pursuing for the sake of pursuit because you love it? Because it is exciting to you? Because you want to do it? And if that's not on the list, or if it's on the list but it's getting very little of your attention, your resources, consider reallocating. And our allocation does not need to stay the same forever. For me, recently, I had to reallocate my fitness pursuits. I was getting too deep for too long, and it was starting to take away from other areas. And it was keeping me from investing resources where I needed to. I know I talked just a few minutes ago about how that was an enhancer over the last number of years, and it was. And it still is. But just because something can be an enhancer does not mean that we can't be or become over-concentrated or over-focused on it. And it was getting to the point after the last few years where it was starting to take away from my capacity and resources to invest properly elsewhere. Things will ebb and flow. We need to make adjustments. That is why, another reason why, we talk about the principles of tracking, measuring, and benchmarking, of asset allocation and rebalancing. And don't worry, I've not quit working out, even though I've joked about that with some people. And I've had times where I've been over-concentrated in other areas in the past. In my career, in my service roles, and I know that I still am in some areas. But we need to pay attention to be able to see that. And let's also consider areas where we might be spread so thin that nothing is compounding or growing. Remember that gym example that I mentioned in the last episode? Spending 2 hours doing every single exercise on every machine, spending a ton of time and effort, but not really getting any results. Another example could be a lot of friends, but all superficial, no depth. No one to really lean on when you're down or call for help during a time of crisis. In work and career, I see this. You may see it too. People who are very busy, tons to do, getting a lot done, seemingly, but not making any progress. Not deep in anything. Not building and not getting meaningful results. This can happen in community involvement. Involved in tons of organizations, but not much to show for it. No leadership, no results, no depth. And these don't have to be big or existential things. It can apply to any area we want to make progress in. I like to talk about the big pursuits of life, but these can also apply to side quests, hobbies, like we talked about earlier, things that aren't for the purpose of being productive. Diversification is good for stability and breadth, and concentration is necessary for making progress and achieving depth. It is a balance of sorts, and that balance can and should shift around. We'll dig deeper into this another time, but our spotlight of attention has to move around. If we leave it in place for too long, it can turn into a magnifying glass and start to scorch the thing that we're focused too much on. And if we don't shine it for long enough on what we claim to care about, those areas will start to freeze over. So identify the areas of life you want to make progress in. And once identified, more concentration might be required. And at the same time, we need to identify the areas that loom too large and pull too many resources that put us at significant risk. So to sum it up, write it down, estimate your allocation, find areas of overconcentration, identify areas of over-diversification, and then reallocate resources appropriately. And I will give this reminder one more time because I think it's so important. Don't be afraid to lean into and really pursue what appears to be unproductive. If it is something that you love and it's something that is inspiring, energy-giving. The pursuit without an obvious payoff. Maybe what someone else might label as a waste. That fitness goal, that niche hobby, that thing you've always wanted to make or fix or understand. Not as an excuse to add something in the name of diversification, but because it is something you want to enjoy investing in for the sake of the joy and the progress in the pursuit. Because these pursuits are probably the areas you can and will enjoy the most and make the most progress in. And will very likely have spillover effects and will be an area of refuge and continued progress even in hard times, when a main return generating area of life is stagnant or regressing. You'll have something that you love that will keep you motivated and keep you investing. And would you look at that? We've come full circle and identified that those silly, frivolous, wasteful things maybe do have a return. And if all I did was money investing and that's all I focused on, I might have more money. And I would certainly have a much shallower and less meaningful life. And paradoxically, the more money poured into that situation, the worse the outcomes. Because money amplifies what is already there. There is much more to life than having a perfectly allocated and very large investment portfolio. There's much more to life than having the successful career. The investment portfolio is there to support life, not the other way around. Okay, thank you for investing in yourself and in those around you. I will talk to you next time. I think I probably need to trim the portfolio. Podcasting counts as like 2 hobbies. So, what goes? Faith or family? Because it ain't gonna be finance or fitness.